In this video, we're going to take a look at the Fruity Flanger, which is a flange sound effect. What is a flanger, first of all? Well, a flanger, along with the chorus effect as well, is essentially a way of creating a sound by delaying different sounds and then playing them back all at the same time and delaying them only by usually a few milliseconds. By doing this, you get what's called in physics a form of phase cancellation, which is what happens when you combine different delayed copies of one particular sound. To give you an example which you would hear in an everyday basis, one particular example of this is when you hear jet engines, which occurs because you hear the two jet engines at different rates, both of which are generally making the same noise at the same sort of volume. However, you'll tend to hear one slightly sooner than the other because you're standing slightly closer to it, and the combination gives you a very strange sort of wavy sound effect. What does this sound like in practice? Well, let's have a look at putting the flanger into an FL Studio project and let's see what it sounds like. First of all, we're going to go up to the channel rack and we're going to add a new sound, and because we've used it so far in all of our other videos, we're going to use FL keys. However, one common instrument that you would use a flanger on would be an electric guitar, and you'll often hear this effect used in rock and pop music. Let's just create a really simple melody first of all, like we've done before as well. This is really basic. And what we're going to do is we're actually just going to hold Control, left mouse button down, and extend these notes so that they're being held. We're going to link this to the mixer track, to mixer track 5, and we're going to go to the mixer window and open up the Fruity Flanger in an empty slot by navigating to the slot and navigating down to Fruity Flanger. Here you will see a panel with quite a few controls on it. Like with previous plugins, it's impossible really to give an accurate demonstration of what each of these controls do separately on their own. Rather, it is the combination of what all of these do in combination with each other that gives you the effect. Let's first of all just play back what the sound sounds like with this applied. And with it off. And I'll adjust the mix level so you can hear the difference as well. You should be able to hear the difference. Let's now take a look at some of the controls within the Fruity Flanger. First of all, the delay. Similar to other delay controls that we've seen in other plugins, this sets the minimum delay between the different voices of the flanger. When we say voices, we mean the individual instances of the flanger being played back of the source sound. The flanger delay will be swept between delay and depth. The range is usually between 0 to 20 milliseconds, which you can see here. Generally, the lower this effect, the deeper the flanger will sound. Let's have a look at the depth now as well. The depth controls the modulation of the flanger delay. And again, this delay will be swept between the delay and the delay plus depth. If this value is 0, the flanger won't actually do anything as the delay modulation will stay constant, so you won't get a moving effect. So if we set this to 0, you'll get a flanger effect, but it won't move. If you set this depth to a higher value, you'll get heavier modulation. The rate is the rate at which the flanger gets modulated, and you can set this between 0 Hz and 5 Hz. The phase controls the stereo image. So when we've talked about stereo before, we talk about the difference between a mono and a stereo sound. So a mono sound is a sound which is in the centre of the mix. And a stereo sound uses both your left and right speakers, and the range is between 0 to 360 degrees. At 180 degrees, which is the setting here in the middle, you will get the left and right channel being 100% out of phase. And what does this mean? It means that the left channel will reach its maximum when the right channel is also at its minimum. Let's now have a look at the damp control. The damp control basically dampens the higher frequencies of the flanger. You get this from 0 all the way through to 1. What does the shape do? The shape determines the exact waveform of the LFO that's in the flanger. LFO obviously stands for low frequency oscillation, and it's a term that we've looked at in the terminology video, and it's also something that we'll look at in later videos as well. The feed is short for feedback, which is a range between 0 to 100%. And remember, when we talk about feedback, we are talking about the amount of affected sound. The invert feedback does what it says on the tin. It inverts the feedback. The invert wet control will change exactly how the flanger and chorus sounds, but the invert feedback will essentially do the same thing, but be used in a less dramatic way. What do these three controls here do? The dry, wet, and the cross. Similar to other plugins, the dry level is the volume at which the original sound gets played back. The wet is the volume at which the plugin's sound itself gets played back. And the cross is an inverted version of the wet sound as well. Let's now have a look at some of the presets that come with the Fruity Flanger and scroll through them to give you an idea of what this can sound like. These are just some of the presets that come with the Fruity Flanger. Let's take a look at some other effects now too.